professor of biochemistry and molecular biology, to introduce our last speaker.
It is my pleasure to introduce our final speaker of this Nobel Conference, Chef En-Ming Hsu. She is a world champion pastry chef, perfecter of butter cake, and co-founder of SIP, Extraordinary Drinking Chocolate. Like our Gustavus students, Chef En-Ming's professional journey started with a liberal arts education. She earned a bachelor's degree in studio art from Skidmore College before pursuing professional pastry training at the Culinary Institute of America. Chef En-Ming credits the design and presentation of her desserts and her ability to pivot into the business world to her undergraduate education. Chef En-Ming is part artist, part scientist, experimenting with sugar and pushing it to the limits of what is possible in her culinary creations. Chef En-Ming has earned several awards, including the Emeretti World Pastry Team Championship Pastry Chef of the Year Award in 2010, one of the highest honors in the pastry world. She was the team captain of the first and only US pastry team to capture the gold medal at the Coupe du Monde de la Patisserie Pastry World Cup in Lyon, France. We are excited to have Chef En-Ming here to talk about a pastry chef's relationship with the science and ethics of sugar. Please help me in welcoming Chef En-Ming to the stage. I think we're in for a sweet treat.
Just after our last presentation, I feel like I'm on trial or something. Okay, well, I'll give it a shot. So first, sorry, I've lost my voice, of course. But I'll get through this here, and hopefully not too bad. But first, thank you, Janie, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you also to Gustavus for inviting me to join this very special conference, and also for the hospitality. And a special thanks to my wonderful student liaisons. That's Margot, and hiding is Lauren. But Margot was really instrumental. You know, these techie little kid pros are so good. She made my slideshow for me, so couldn't do without that. All right, so I think we are on the wrong slide. Okay, that sneak peek, forget you saw that. Okay, so let me just, sorry, I have to set up 2 screens here. And hopefully I get this right. Okay, so we've just had 2 days of the most incredible discussions about sugar, cultural significance, the science behind sugar, the bitterness of sugar, sugar on our cells, sugar addiction, liquid sugar's effect on our health. You know, so many things that we really haven't thought too much about, but maybe heard a little bit about. But what have we not discussed in 2 days? Not one person. Okay, so Phil mentioned the donut a couple of times. We haven't talked about the pleasures of eating sugar. So, this is my world. And I would love to switch gears and bring you into what I do every day. So, sorry, let's pretend that we're going to take a break. We're going to go out, have a little coffee time, and let's say that sorry, I have multiple screens here. Okay, so we're going to see in front of us a lemon break, for example. Beautiful display. The room smells sweet. It smells like fruit. You see glistening sugar, lemon bars, maybe lemon cake, some lemon candies, lemonade. How does this make you feel? Are you excited? Do you feel your mouth watering? Is this something that perks you up, or it's a fruit confection break? These are all sweets made out of fruits. What does this say about us and our interest and our desires to eat sweets? It gives us happiness, it gives us pleasure, maybe comfort, maybe some sort of satisfaction. We're all different, right, in how we approach sweets. But it's my job as a pastry chef to create these happy memories and experiences for you. I do feel that it is important for our emotional well-being as well as being essential for our overall good health. Pastry chefs basically have the same training. We're schooled in the same fundamentals, but we're all unique. We have different interests. Some of us really think a little bit more about the future of our industry. Some of us think a little bit more about the economics of being a pastry chef. So while it's true that I bring pleasures and delights to you, I'm often challenged by this one question. Do I have a responsibility towards you to thoughtfully create desserts and keep your well-being in mind? So if I do that, how do I think about us, and how do I think about us indulging mindfully? Sugar has a dual role, concern and comfort. So I do believe that it is possible for us to have pleasure and happiness, and also that I can provide good health to you at the same time. Sugar is one of the most important ingredients in what I do. I always have core ingredients, so sugar, butter, flour, eggs. Sugar is my workhorse ingredient. It belongs in almost everything that I create or do. It has multiple capabilities, but primarily it is the sweetener. So in baking, when I'm making my cakes, it makes my cakes golden brown and delicious. It gives that eye appeal. Cookies are crisp on the outside, soft on the inside. My ice creams and sorbets are scoopable. My desserts are moist and tender, and it keeps my food fresh for longer. So it works on preserving fruits and vegetables and keeps those at room temperature all day if I use it properly. But it gives me enhanced color and balances the flavors in everything that I make. So in artistic work, so this is a photo of the USA sugar sculpture, which was part of my team's presentation at the Coupe du Monde. This was created by my partner and my good friend Ewald Notter. So he's a sugar artist. If I take sugar, make a syrup out of it, add acid, maybe some glucose, and we've talked a lot about glucose. If I add acid, cream of tartar, or something acidic to it, add some color, I'm going to be able to create these types of artistic presentations. They are all 100% sugar. They've been manipulated, and this is because I understand how sugar behaves as an artist's medium. But I can blow air into it like a glass blower would, or I can pour it out into a big sheet of glass and create a shiny, clear base. I can stretch it and turn it into a ribbon, a satiny ribbon with multiple layers of colors. So endless possibilities. So showpiece work for a lot of pastry chefs, this is the fun stuff. So this is when we are creating things that are pleasing to the eye, delightful for everyone to see. They go on buffets and everybody oohs and ahs over them. So it's a lot of fun. This always reminds me of my Skidmore days when I was in the art studios. But now my medium is sugar and it's not silver. But I still have to do the same thing. I have to understand how the material works and how to manipulate it and understand its behavior so I can create something like this. Now, I wouldn't encourage eating something like this. So many times people come up to the pieces and they want to snap a piece off of it. I mean, we've worked for weeks on those things. It's really not edible. But, however, I can take the same techniques and create something that is edible. Here I've created some candy canes. They are filled with chocolate mint filling. So I've enrobed it with a sugar paste and then stretched it out and then created these lollipop shapes and candy cane shapes. So they're very delicious to eat. I can also take a very classic French technique of building something called a croquembouche. These are very traditional French displays for celebrations. I can make mini versions of these. This is made with Patisserie filled with a cream and then placed on the traditional base, which is a nougatine. That's an almond and sugar mixture. So I've created a plated dessert out of that. But these are just little tastes of something that we can do with sugar. So sugar has a sweetness to it, and it's universally regarded as a positive, strong experience. So we use it in our language. We talk about how it implies goodness. We have home, sweet home. We say life is sweet. How sweet it is, sweet dreams. I have a sweet tooth. Or maybe you might say, hey, sweetie, I'm home. But sugar also has a power over us. It's an emotional power. So maybe some of you all raise your hand. It's happened to me. Raise your hand. You've suffered a terrible breakup. The world as you know it has come to an end. Next thing you know, you're laughing. Next thing you know, you're plowing through a bucket of ice cream. So in your desperate time of need, you get this double hit now of endorphins and dopamine. We talked a little bit about dopamine. So these are things that give you comfort and maybe makes you want to eat more. But eating sweets does this. It's a way to cope, coping mechanisms, and maybe a way of providing yourself some stress relief. You know, exam time's rolling up. Here comes the box of cookies. But this is not just for bad times, but it's also for good times. Sugar is the central element many times of our celebrations. Our beautiful wedding cakes, maybe a baby shower, graduation celebrations. These are things that we use to create emotional connections with each other. You know, or maybe it's the holidays. So when I was a pastry chef at the Ritz-Carlton Chicago, annual tradition, we worked for weeks building an enormous gingerbread village, and we put it in the lobby of the hotel. Then families would come every year, and this is their family tradition. They go to the Ritz, they admire the gingerbread village, and then they go and have afternoon tea before they hit the street for shopping. So these are things that are very important, and sugar has a big part of it. It reinforces these social bonds that we experience together, and hopefully experience together as a family. So one thing that I think about a lot, when we eat sugar and we get these feelings of pleasure and comfort, We tend to remember these feelings and we link it to positive emotions. So feelings can be tied to success or maybe achieving a goal. Maybe it gives you a feeling of pride and validation. Those are very important to us. So this leads further to the idea that we use sweets as a reward or as a treat. So we use treat, that word, often. So maybe you say, you finished your dinner, so I'm going to let you eat dessert. Or you scored a goal, so let's go get some ice cream. So the giver feels good and the receiver feels good. So that's a win-win, and that comes from eating sweets. So what's the issue with that? I call it my conundrum. I realize that eating sweets is not good for you, so if that's the case, why am I rewarding you with something now that we know is not good for you and it's bad for you? That's my life. My life as a pastry chef. But now I feel that as I get older, I enjoy sweets just a little bit less. Maybe it's age-related. I used to be able to eat a sack of cookies, no problem. Now, not so much. But sometimes when I think about it, I think maybe it's because I spend all of my working days just surrounded by these aromas of baked goods, of chocolate. You know, I work a lot with chocolate. I smell it all the time. It's on me. I smell vanilla all the time. You would never think that, you know, I smell like vanilla. I can't deal with this. But it's true. And so maybe it saturates my senses and I feel satiated. I feel happy. And I am not deprived of eating sweets. So this is good for me because now I'm reducing my sugar intake. So we know that that's healthy. So I would like to do this for my guests. And I'd like to do it in a way so you can enjoy your desserts and not feel like you're restricted or deprived. So for me, that's the worst feeling to have. Negative feelings where a dessert experience was unsatisfactory. You know, that never works. So these things are important to me. Here's a good example. One of the classes that I used to teach a lot was preserving fruits. So in a classic recipe, you're going to take equal parts sugar and fruit. So you'll see 1 pound of sugar, 1 pound of fruit. Never fails. A student is going to come to me and say, "Chef, can I cut the sugar in my recipe?" You know, they're really horrified by the amount of sugar that's going into this recipe. So I say, "Sure, go ahead. Make a recipe with 50% of the sugar." So I know that when I use the proper amount of sugar, I'm going to let sugar do its job. Sugar in preserves the color, it preserves the flavor, it preserves the fruit, and allows me to store that fruit at room temperature for a year. And it's delicious, right? So it always comes about at the end of the class when we do our tastings of everything that we have made. I watch the student, and it's just an observation that I have, but they go to try the low sugar preserve. So it's now softer, maybe a little on the mushy side. The color is not as bright, maybe a little flat tasting. So then I see them taste, and then they taste again, and then they taste again. And so I'm thinking, okay, so if you taste the properly made or the traditionally made proportion, you take a spoon, you get all the flavors that you expect. You expect something sweet. You expect it to taste like the fruit. Compared to the one that's less, but now you have consumed so much more of it. And at the end, you're not satisfied. So, but I do show them the proper way to make the lower sugar preserves. And, you know, unfortunately, you have to add some additives, extra pectin, maybe some stabilizers to it. And it's still the same issue. You're going to add, you know, you're going to be eating so much more of that just to get that satisfaction of a fruit preserve. So this, to me, is deprivation. It's negative emotions that doesn't lead to that balanced, healthy living that I really like and find very important. So I talked about mindful desserts earlier. So what does that mean? For mindful desserts, I want to be creating desserts that provide pleasure, and those types of pleasures that we are accustomed to, but maybe in a different way. So, approach number one. All right, Dr. Avina brought this up just briefly, but I'm like, no, I really believe in this. Moderation. I do believe that you can have a very enjoyable experience through moderation. So many times I'll make buffets like this, miniature French pastries, or what I call petit gâteaux, mini desserts. These are little compact versions of a larger dessert. So small desserts on a heavy, large plate gives you a perceived value and maybe a feeling of quality, richness, indulgence. So also, and this is based mostly on my experience, where I'm in luxury properties, and a little bit more attention is to put on the quality of the desserts. But it encourages slowing down your eating, and maybe a waiter is serving the desserts, so you feel like you have time to savor and enjoy. So these are the little things that can help with how we consume desserts. Approach number two for me. So this is the idea of taking savory ingredients or ingredients that are not expected as a dessert ingredient and building a dessert out of this. This is an example of a truffle ice cream, black truffle ice cream that's cooked with, or that's served with a sautéed pear and a port wine reduction with little pieces of black truffle on it. So I recently had a really nice experience. I judged a competition, and there was a team from Canada in the competition. It was a dessert competition. Part of the competition guidelines were you have to use something that represents terroir. So terroir is using what is in your region, maybe local. And so for Canada, that is that wilderness area. So this team made a dessert with lichen, mushrooms, wild berries, nuts, and syrups. They combined it all together. The appearance of it was like a forest. So it was served on a piece of wood, a little, a crosscut of wood, and they smoked some sweetgrass. So that area is very known for sweetgrass. They smoked it, and so we had those aromas and the visuals of interest, texture, and it made me curious. So I wasn't focusing so much on, this is a dessert that's not very sweet, but I was intrigued by everything around that dessert, which made the dessert unique and special. So these are little techniques that we can use to refocus and think about desserts in a different way. And if we're trying to consume less sugar, these are distracting us. So another technique, and this approach is the more common approach for me. So years ago, I was working with an import company, and we did presentations. So this is based loosely on this style that we were teaching of how to put compositions together. So this is using our understanding of our human senses and building a dessert out of our human senses, using that as the foundation. So the concept is to take taste and smell. So taste and smell are our chemical senses. So we taste salty things. We taste sweet, sour, bitter, maybe a little bit of umami. So when we taste that, interest can be created by putting opposites together. So sweet with sour, bitter and salty, or salty and sweet. By combining those, we are adding complexity. With smells, we're thinking about aromas, memories, maybe emotions. So if we were to take the two of those senses, combine them together, what does it give us? It gives us flavor. So for example, I plug my nose. Cherry Lifesaver. I don't know if it's a cherry lifesaver. I can't smell it. Unplug my nose, I have a cherry lifesaver in my mouth. So these two combined give us that sense of flavor. So this is the first thing I look at. Then I look at my physical senses. So this is all in the theory of composing a dessert. Now I'm going to look at hearing, touch, and my sight. Hearing is things like music that influence us, crunching noises, sounds, people around us talking in a restaurant. These influence how we eat. So high-pitched tones, music, or any kind of sound that's high-pitched tends to be a little bit of lightness and sweetness, so we associate high-pitched noises and sounds with sweetness. So this is something called cross-modal perception, where one sense influences another. So here we have hearing and we have taste. Our brain is associating what we hear to what we eat, and that can make it feel like it's a little bit sweeter. So I'm making a less sweet dessert, but you think it's a little bit sweeter. So then the next one is touch. Eating sensations is touch. So when I combine the hearing and the touch together, I get textures, temperatures, and those two give me mouth feels. So this is very good for complexity and interest. So by combining crunchy things, soft things, liquid things, or warm parts of the dessert, warm parts of the composition, with something frozen or maybe something cool, lightness, like mousses are light, biscuits are hard and crunchy. Combining these together give me interest. So same thing, I'm building complexity, I'm building interest. Textures are interesting, and if we think about eating something that's really crunchy, it takes a little time, you have to chew through it, so it sends the message to your brain just a little bit slower what it is that you're eating. So you can play with sweetness level with this. Liquids are the best. If you want to send a message to your brain faster, what it is that you're eating, or what the flavor is, or what the sweetness level is, a liquid works because it coats your tongue, it coats your taste buds, sends the message up to your brain faster. So if I wanted something that I want that hint and the strong feeling of sweetness, I'm going to go into a liquid form, and then maybe just a little bit less of it so I can control the amount of sweetness. But right away, it makes you think that something is sweet. So this is like the raspberry sauce here. Taste that sauce, and it's going to be like, ooh, this is raspberries. Ooh, it's a little bit sweet, a little bit tart. Sight is the last one. So sight gives us visual clues. We look at colors, we look at shapes, we look at designs, patterns. We eat with our eyes. So it always influences what we see. It always influences what we're eating. And it influences the overall experience. If you don't like what you see, you might not like what you're going to eat. So we think a lot about that. The size, the quality of the plate that the dessert goes on, fine quality boosts flavor, intensity, gives you a sense of elegance, and also does the thing where you think a little bit more about what you're eating, consider it, savor the moment. It comes back to the whole concept of treating yourself. You're going to treat yourself to a nice dessert. Here's another example of a cross-modal perception. This is between sight and taste. We associate round plates with sweetness. So now we're going to put this nice caramelized apple dessert, and that's a pulled sugar apple, and it's filled with some sorbet. We're going to take this dessert and on the round plate, fine china is going to make you feel like the dessert is more vibrant, a little bit more contrast between the white plate and the darker colors of the dessert, but it looks sweeter. So, and this is not a sweet dessert. You're sweetening with your eyes and not with your taste buds. So this is another way to look at how can we add sweetness to our desserts. So in this effort of creating a better for you dessert, I have a strategy. So that strategy has to fit into the menu design. So I don't work by myself on a menu. I am working with a team of chefs. So everything has to match. So I can't be like far out there thinking about all these weird things and it doesn't match the rest of the meals. We've had that experience so many times and it just doesn't work. But I can really think hard on how I build my desserts by thinking this whole senses process and building in a way that is considered in a kitchen reversed. So usually we might say, oh, I love this plate. I'm going to make a dessert on this plate. No, now I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to focus on the flavors. For me, flavors are always going to be the most important. But this way, if I build this concept, flavors first, textures, temperatures next, the appearance after that, it's a little bit easier to conceptualize the whole dessert and really think about what it is that I want to achieve. In this case, healthy desserts, less sugar. So I might take, for the flavors, 3 or 4 primary flavors, and depending on how I want to approach this, let's say I want to get more into the savories, I will still stick to classical flavor combinations. For example, vanilla, chocolate with almonds, classic combination. But I might be going more into savory types of applications or methods, ingredients, just to get that same idea that the Canadian team had. But it's always going to be high quality ingredients. I love working with farmers. I love sourcing locally, but I want the varieties that are well produced so they have the maximum flavor. And then I build the desserts from that. Then I'm going to look at my textures and temperatures for complexity if I want, but it can't be so much that the dessert becomes confusing. Here I have an example of a sorbet, tangerine sorbet, nougat glacé, light and fluffy. There's a Kunstgelee on the inside and a fresh tangerine salad. So these are combinations that go very well together. Same thing, lower in sweetness, but I get the effect that I want where I'm building different textures within the dessert. There's some crunchy layers on the outside, and the tuile basket is crispy also. So these are things that distract attention. Many little techniques. So once I get those components, flavors, textures, all of that put together, I look at the appearance next. So one technique that I like to do, and I've done that here with this lemon blueberry dessert, there's a nice little meringue around it. I've spun sugar and then put this angel sugar around the outside, and this gives me that appearance of sweet. You look at it, you see sugar decor. You see a little bit of a candied kumquat on it. This looks sweet. You probably are not going to eat all of that sugar. You're going to go right into the dessert. And then you're going to have a little bit of lemon cream on the inside, a little bit of basil sorbet. But this is another way of controlling how we use sugar and then just kind of fooling and using your eyes to change the way you see or appreciate a dessert. So now, come to SIP. This is my new company. So SIP is created kind of in that same better for you idea. Here you can have a rich, decadent dessert, but it's lower in sugar. You get the antioxidant benefits that we want from cocoa. We want those flavonoids, we want the polyphenols. We get it in this. And these are all high quality, responsibly sourced products. So we know that it's good for you and it's going to satisfy your chocolate cravings. My serving size is not 10 ounces, it's 5 ounces. So you're getting just enough to really appreciate a good beverage. So, in conclusion, it does take time to retrain your brain a little bit, to accept these concepts of less desserts, and maybe adapt a little bit to having less sugar in our diet. And you know what? Not all people are going to buy into this. We're so used to sugar. Even with SIP, somebody will say, oh, it's not sweet enough for me. What's my response? Add more sugar. I do think it's important for chefs to give guests the options and consider how they want to create their desserts. So this is one way. But, we talked a little bit about high-intensive sweeteners, artificial sweeteners. I don't know how you feel about these. I do not consume them myself, so I really don't incorporate them too much. But if I talk to a food scientist, it's the first response a food scientist will say to me: add a liquid sweetener to it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to figure out some workaround for the dessert. But the popularity now of no added sugar on the label, 0 grams sugar on the label, it's very hard to compete against that. But you're looking at these ingredients that you'd have to decide, do you want that for yourself? For me, I'm just going to stick to the traditional way. So I want healthy desserts, no sacrifice in pleasure, and I'm going to continue working on ways to find the best ways to give the best things to my customers. But I have no qualms about taking one of those big campfire s'mores marshmallows, those big square things. I'm going to toast that thing up. Normally, my SIP is just on its own. I just drink it on its own. But I have no problem dropping one of those big toasted marshmallows right on top of my SIP and enjoying my SIP. Why? Because I love it, and it makes me feel really good. So I've treated myself. But thank you all for listening, and enjoy the rest of the program.
Hey, everybody.
Well, that really
welcome
was
back
a treat.
to the Gustavus
We're gonna do another
Nobel
brief
Conference
break.
live stream with me, Tane Danger, and...
Maggie Kurth.
Hey, that was really great. 2 really great lectures.
Yes.
Economics of sugar. Super
Fascinating.
interesting. Yeah. And then Pastry Chef, which I know I have been building up this entire conference.
You have. And it paid off.
It
You
paid off.
did not oversell.
I don't think I did. I think
No.
she was amazing.
I think that one of the things I loved best about her talk was that she was taking this very methodical, scientific approach to how to create delicious flavors
Right.
that bring pleasure and joy, like you've been talking about, and that also incorporate ideas some of the scientists we listened to have been talking about like eating less sugar. How do you give people that joy
Yeah.
for less of the stuff that is bad for them? And the process that she goes through to create that, and these different textures and different flavors, building this all up, it's just fascinating.
It was, and it was such. We will talk about the economics piece, but I just to build on this, the pastry chef discussion. I mean, Chef Hsu talking about this, we've had this way throughout these 2 days. People have been saying, here's all the ways sugar is bad for you. Here's all the ways that it's bad for society. Here's all the ways it's been bad through history. And then almost everybody's been like, but we still love it and it's good.
We still love it.
This was kind of a flip in some ways at that, where she started out saying like, I am very mindful, I am not just putting sugar in stuff just to put it in there. I am not like trying to do some big processed food thing where I am deliberate. There's a reason. And part of that reason is joy. And I just loved how she talked about there's the actual joy, and she was very scientific about like the ways that it brings across certain flavors and whatnot. But she also brought in like the way that it is part of ritual and the way that it is part of social structure